If you are moving through your workday dealing with an endless, unbroken stream of tasks, finishing a report only to immediately answer an urgent message, ending one meeting only to brace for the next wave of information, you are not operating at the speed of business. You are quietly eroding your cognitive baseline. There is a very specific type of exhaustion that belongs entirely to the modern professional. It is a quiet, hollow fatigue. It does not come from physical exertion. It does not come from lifting heavy objects or running miles. It settles somewhere behind your eyes around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and it stays with you until you finally collapse into bed. You are in your late 30s, your 40s, or beyond. You are no longer trying to figure out how the world works. You have built a career. You have established a life, acquired responsibilities, and earned your position. Yet, despite your experience and your undeniable competence, you increasingly find yourself operating in a state of chronic, low-grade panic. You justify this to yourself. You call it a strong work ethic. You tell yourself that you are simply keeping up with the demands of a high-paced, digitally connected environment. You believe that surviving this daily avalanche of demands is simply the price of being a reliable provider and an indispensable professional. But the truth is far less noble and, frankly, far more dangerous. You are not keeping pace. You are merely reacting. You are allowing the relentless, unbroken waves of tasks, communications, and digital demands to erode your cognitive capacity, piece by piece, hour by hour. We live in an era where the absence of boundaries is celebrated as dedication. The modern corporate environment and the digital ecosystem are built on the premise of frictionless transition. You finish a complex, demanding quarterly report, and before your brain has even registered completion of that deep cognitive load, you are responding to an urgent text from a colleague. The moment you hit send on that text, you're clicking a link to join a virtual meeting, bracing yourself for an entirely new stream of data. From the spreadsheet to the email, from the email to the Slack message, from the Slack message to the Zoom call. No pauses, no friction, no silence. This constant, rapid-fire shifting from one context to another creates a powerful illusion of high performance. When you operate this way, you feel busy. You feel essential. The sheer velocity of your day tricks you into believing you are highly productive. But underneath that illusion, beneath the surface of your busy day, your neurological architecture is buckling under an impossible strain. You are forcing your brain to operate without transition, without recovery, and without the essential empty spaces required for cognitive consolidation. Think about what you are actually asking your biology to do. You are asking a biological organ, evolved over millions of years to focus on one primary survival task at a time, to process a dozen simultaneous streams of abstract data, without a single moment of rest. This is not productivity. This is self-sabotage masked as efficiency. When you stack tasks back to back without a buffer, you are not seamlessly flowing through your workday. You are creating a series of violent, microscopic collisions in your mind. The exhaustion you feel at the end of the day, that buzzing, irritable numbness where you cannot even bear to make a simple decision about what to eat for dinner, is not a sign that you work hard. It is a symptom of cognitive trauma. It is the biological bill coming due for a day spent disrespecting the limits of your own nervous system. You have likely convinced yourself that taking a break is a luxury you cannot afford. You tell yourself, if I just push through this next hour, if I just clear this inbox, I will finally have control. But control never comes, does it? The inbox refills. The messages continue. The meetings are scheduled over the meetings. The problem you are facing is not a lack of time. The problem is a catastrophic mismanagement of your mental energy. You are attempting to run a marathon at a sprint pace, holding your breath the entire time, and you are wondering why you feel like you are suffocating. To understand why this relentless pacing is destroying your focus and stealing your peace, we cannot look at time management hacks or motivational platitudes. We have to look under the hood. We have to examine the hidden mechanics of your daily operations and the invisible biological tax you are paying every single time you switch your attention. The problem you are facing is not the sheer volume of your work. The volume is manageable. You have handled heavy workloads before. The actual mechanism destroying your focus is a continuous, unbuffered switching between tasks. Let us dismantle a persistent lie you have been sold. You believe you can multitask. You believe that as an experienced professional, you have developed the ability to juggle 3 complex problems simultaneously. But neuroscience is absolutely clear on this point. The human brain cannot parallel process higher-order cognitive tasks. You do not multitask. You microshift. You rapidly toggle your spotlight of attention from one target to another. And every single time you make that shift, you pay a steep biological tax. In cognitive science, this tax is known as a task switching penalty. When you are deep into analyzing a spreadsheet, your brain loads a specific set of rules, memories, and contexts into its working memory. If a notification suddenly flashes across your screen and you click away to read a message from your boss, your brain must execute a violent maneuver. It must actively suppress the rules of the spreadsheet, disengage from that neural pathway, and rapidly load the context and social dynamics required to process the message. When you click back to the spreadsheet 3 minutes later, the brain has to reverse the entire process. This is not a seamless software operation. This is a heavy metabolic event. It consumes actual physical energy, glucose and oxygen, inside your brain. When you force this transition dozens or hundreds of times a day without a single moment of recovery, you are bleeding cognitive fuel. But the energy drain is only half the crisis. The far more destructive consequence of this relentless toggling is a phenomenon known as attention residue. When you abruptly abandon a task to respond to an urgent demand, your mind does not simply cut the cord cleanly. Because you did not bring the first task to a psychological close, a fragment of your processing power remains stuck there. A piece of your attention is left behind, spinning its wheels on the unresolved problem. So, when you enter your next meeting, you are not arriving with 100% of your cognitive capacity. You are arriving with perhaps 80%. The other 20 is still ghost writing the email you abandoned. Then, halfway through the meeting, you discreetly check your phone and read a disturbing text, which you cannot immediately answer. Now you leave the meeting and begin a new project, but your capacity has dropped to 60%. You are smearing your attention across the day, leaving pieces of your intellect scattered across a dozen half-finished interactions. Think of your mind like the random access memory, the RAM, of a computer. When you wake up in the morning, your RAM is clear. You feel sharp. You feel capable. But every time you jump from task to task without a hard pause, you're opening a new application without closing the previous one. By 10 in the morning, you have 14 background processes running. By 2 in the afternoon, you have 50. This is the exact reason why the 3 o'clock crash hits you with such devastating force. When 3 o'clock arrives, your brain feels like wet concrete. You stare at a simple email and find yourself unable to construct a basic sentence. You feel an overwhelming urge to consume sugar, drink more caffeine, or simply shut your eyes. You assume you are just physically tired. You are not. You are experiencing system overload. Your neural network is entirely choked with the unresolved transitions and attention residue of 100 micro-interruptions. Your brain's RAM is maxed out. It simply has no more bandwidth to process new information. This hidden erosion explains why you feel so old, so cynical, and so exhausted despite sitting in a climate-controlled chair all day. You are quietly demanding that your nervous system process an unnatural frequency of context shifts. You are treating your mind like a machine that does not require maintenance, lubrication, or a cool-down protocol. The immediate result is a severe drop in the quality of your work. But the secondary result is far more insidious. When your cognitive resources are drained to the absolute bottom by this invisible friction, your brain begins to fundamentally alter the way it operates. It changes its entire operational state to protect itself from the chaos you have created. It stops trying to solve problems, and it starts trying to merely survive them. And that is where the true psychological damage begins. When your cognitive RAM is entirely full and your metabolic fuel is depleted, your brain does not politely request a break. It stages a biological coup. It looks at the relentless, unbroken onslaught of emails, sudden meetings, unread messages, and rapid context shifts, and it no longer perceives them as mere work tasks. It perceives them as a predatory threat. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between the psychological pressure of a violently overbooked schedule and the physical danger of a predator in the brush. To your ancient biology, an overwhelming amount of unstructured, unceasing noise equals imminent destruction. Because of this perceived threat, your brain forcefully shifts control away from your prefrontal cortex. This is the advanced, rational, executive center of your mind, the part of you that plans for the future, regulates your emotions, and executes deep, strategic work. As that higher-order system goes offline, your brain hands the steering wheel directly to your amygdala, the primitive alarm center responsible for your fight-or-flight response. You have just entered survival mode. You know exactly what the state feels like. It is that tight, rigid posture you adopt by mid-afternoon, where your shoulders are creeping up toward your ears. It is the shallow, rapid breathing you do not even realize you are doing. It is a sudden, irrational surge of anger when a colleague asks a perfectly normal question. It is a defensive, irritable tone you use when your partner or your child asks for your attention at the end of the day. You are not failing at emotional intelligence. Your nervous system has simply been hijacked. In survival mode, you are no longer making strategic, rational decisions. You are executing defensive maneuvers. You become highly reactive, quietly paranoid, and easily threatened. A neutral email from a client is suddenly interpreted as a direct insult. A minor delay in a project feels like a catastrophic failure. Every incoming message feels like a physical blow. You are running entirely on cortisol and adrenaline, stress hormones designed to keep you alive during a physical attack, not to help you navigate a complex corporate environment. You are trying to lead a team, manage a household, and build a future while operating from the most fearful, primitive, and exhausted part of your brain. This is why you feel so incredibly hollow. Now, consider the exact opposite biological state. Think about what happens when you deliberately insert a wedge into that relentless momentum. When you forcefully create a hard space between your tasks, you are not just taking a break. You are sending a massive, undeniable signal of safety to your nervous system. When you protect your energetic perimeter, your brain registers the sudden lack of friction. The alarm bells of the amygdala switch off. Blood flow and electrical activity rapidly return to the prefrontal cortex. You transition out of survival mode and step into what cognitive science recognizes as Thrive Mode. Thrive Mode is not about being overly excited or artificially pumped up. It is characterized by a cold, calm capability. In this state, you do not have to force yourself to be productive. You do not need to consume massive amounts of caffeine or watch a motivational video to feel engaged with your work. When your brain is not drowning in chaotic, unbuffered noise, it naturally calibrates itself. It spontaneously releases healthy, balanced baseline levels of dopamine and serotonin. You experience a profound physical sense of relief. You feel a quiet, unshakable sense of autonomy and control over your environment. The work in front of you no longer feels like a dangerous threat that must be neutralized. It returns to being simply a puzzle to be solved. Your memory improves. Your patience expands. You respond to chaos with cold logic rather than hot emotion. But here's the absolute truth that most professionals refuse to accept. You cannot access Thrive Mode by working harder. You cannot access it by being more resilient, by gritting your teeth, or by pushing through the pain. You cannot outwork a biological deficit. You can only reach this state by respecting the mechanical limits of your own neurology. You have to learn how to purposefully and aggressively stop. But as simple as that sounds, stopping is the one thing your overstimulated, conditioned brain is absolutely terrified of doing. To understand why you fight so hard against your own peace of mind, we have to look at what happens the moment you actually try to focus. Let's take these invisible biological mechanisms out of the laboratory and place them exactly where they are destroying your potential, your actual workday. You need to see what the structural collapse of focus looks like in real time, because you are likely blaming yourself for a moral failure when you are actually trapped in a behavioral loop. Imagine it is a Tuesday morning. It is 10:30. You have finally carved out a protected hour to draft a complex strategy document or a vital proposal, something that requires deep analytical thought and total engagement of your prefrontal cortex. You close your office door, or you put on your noise-canceling headphones. You open the blank document. You begin to write. You get through the first 2 sentences. You can physically feel the friction of concentration. Deep work is metabolically expensive. It requires effort to hold complex variables in your mind simultaneously. But you are settling in. You are just beginning to catch the rhythm of the work. Then, a notification slides across the top right corner of your screen. It is a message from a colleague or a client. It is not an emergency, but it is framed with urgency. Hey, do you have a quick second to look at this file? Your brain, which is currently expending heavy energy trying to solve the complex strategy document, sees an escape route. It recognizes a low-effort, high-reward task. You tell yourself a lie. I will just answer this quickly so it is off my plate, and then I will get right back to the proposal. You click away from the document. You open the messaging app. You read the file. You type a response. The colleague replies immediately. You reply back. It takes perhaps 3 minutes. You hit send, and you feel a microscopic surge of satisfaction. That is a hit of dopamine. You have successfully resolved the situation. You feel productive, but you have just sprung the trap. You click back to your strategy document. You stare at the 2 sentences you wrote just 4 minutes ago, but they look entirely alien to you. The momentum is completely dead. You are looking at the words, but your mind is not there. A significant portion of your attention residue is still lingering in the chat window. You are subconsciously wondering if the colleague understood your tone, or if they're going to reply again with a follow-up question. You sit there, your hands hovering over the keyboard. Your breathing has become slightly shallower. You read the same 2 sentences 3 times, but you cannot figure out what the third sentence should be. The heavy lifting of the deep work now feels impossible, and then the physical symptoms begin. It is a subtle, low-level anxiety. You feel a tight, uncomfortable sensation in your chest or your stomach. It is the physiological craving for another hit of completion. Your brain does not want to do the hard work of writing the proposal. It wants the cheap, easy dopamine of another notification. You feel an almost uncontrollable physical itch to pick up your phone. You just want to check just for a second to see if an email came in or to see if a news headline has updated. You pick up the phone. You unlock it. You open an application that has absolutely nothing to do with your job. You scroll. 10 minutes vanish. 15 minutes vanish. Eventually, you force yourself to put the phone face down. You look back at the monitor. You have been sitting at your desk for 30 minutes. You have produced nothing of value, yet you feel profound, heavy mental fatigue. You feel frustrated with yourself. You tell yourself you lack discipline. You tell yourself you are getting lazy. You are not lazy. You are behaving exactly as a biological organism is conditioned to behave when placed inside a digital Skinner box. The modern workplace is an architecture of behavioral conditioning. It rewards immediate responsiveness and punishes silence. Every time you answer a message within seconds, the system rewards you with that microdose of dopamine, training your brain to crave the friction of being needed. It conditions you to seek out interruptions to alleviate the anxiety of deep focus. You are caught in a distraction loop. You are continuously aborting complex, meaningful work in exchange for the shallow relief of clearing notifications. And the tragedy is, you are paying for this cheap stimulation with the very cognitive currency you need to advance your life. You are bleeding out your potential in 3-minute increments. And if you do not intervene, this loop will become your permanent default state. Stop for a second. Let me ask you something directly. Right now, as you listen to my voice, how many background processes are currently running in your mind? How many unclosed loops are competing for your attention at this exact second? Are you truly, fully focused on the concepts we are dismantling here, or are you only partially listening? Are you simultaneously drafting an email in your head, replaying a tense conversation from this morning, and carrying the low-level anxiety of a deadline that isn't even due until Friday? Pay attention to your body right now. Is your jaw clenched? Is your breathing shallow? Are you feeling that familiar, quiet urge to pick up your phone just to see if a new notification has arrived while you were listening to this? You are physically sitting in your chair. You are present in the room. But where is your consciousness? It is fractured. It is scattered across a dozen different timelines, digital platforms, and hypothetical scenarios. Look at what you are doing to yourself. You have spent the last 10 or 15 years working relentlessly to build a life. You have built a career, secured an income, and perhaps built a family. You have created a reality that you once only hoped for. And yet, because your attention is entirely fragmented by the environment you operate in, you are rarely actually in that life. You are a ghost haunting your own routine. You are physically sitting at the dinner table with your family, but your mind is still trapped in a Slack channel. You're physically lying in bed trying to sleep, but your nervous system is still actively fighting the battles of the afternoon. You are completely consumed by a backlog of workplace panic, processing phantom threats long after the workday has ended. This cannot continue. You know it cannot continue. You can feel your mental elasticity snapping. You cannot sustain a high-level career, let alone a meaningful existence. if your biological baseline is chronic cognitive fragmentation, the cost is simply too high. It is stripping away your patience, hollowing out your creativity, and destroying your capacity to experience any genuine peace. If you do not intervene, the system will continue to extract your energy until there is nothing left but a reactive shell. To reclaim your mind from this cycle, you do not need a new productivity app. You do not need a better time management planner. You do not need another motivational speech telling you to believe in yourself or just try harder to focus. You cannot outthink a biological reflex. You need a mechanical intervention. You need a practical, neurologically grounded framework to aggressively, forcefully insert space back into your daily operations. You must stop trying to manage your time and start fiercely managing your cognitive transitions. You must learn the discipline of the hard boundary. Here is exactly how you build that armor. The framework you're going to deploy is not a set of productivity hacks. It is a biological defense protocol. It consists of 3 non-negotiable mechanisms designed to force a hard boundary between your actions, clear your cognitive RAM, and protect your energetic baseline. This is the discipline of deliberate detachment. The first mechanism is the 1-minute hard close. You must completely restructure how you transition from one task to another before you move from a completed report to your inbox, or before you log out a heavy virtual meeting and begin a new project. You must enforce a 60-second void. You do not immediately click the next tab. You push your chair back. You place your phone face down, physically out of reach. You look away from the illuminated screen, and you find a static object in the physical world, a blank wall, the leaves of a plant on your desk, or simply the darkness behind your own closed eyelids. You sit in absolute silence for 1 full minute. You are not using this time to plan what you're going to say in the next meeting. You are not reflecting on the mistakes of the previous hour. You are doing nothing. From a neurological standpoint, this deliberate silence is a command that flushes your attention residue. It signals to your brain that the previous context is officially and definitively terminated. It is a necessary buffer that allows your working memory to power down, recalibrate, and load the new rules for the next task without carrying the exhausting baggage of the past hour. The most common and fatal mistake professionals make here is deceiving themselves into thinking they are taking a break by organizing their physical desk, checking a quick text message, or scanning the news. That is not a hard close. That is just a different flavor of cognitive load. You must embrace the friction of the empty minute. The second mechanism is the autonomic reset. As your workday progresses, you will inevitably encounter spikes in pressure. A crisis will erupt, an impossible deadline will be dropped on your desk, or a conflict will surface. You will feel the physiological markers of survival mode engaging. Your chest will tighten, your vision will feel narrowed, and your mind will begin to race. When this happens, your instinct will be to push through, to type faster, to react immediately. You must do the exact opposite. You stop entirely. You execute 3 slow, structural breaths. You inhale deeply through your nose, feeling your diaphragm expand, and you exhale slowly through your mouth. Ensure the exhalation is noticeably longer than the inhalation. This is not a mystical relaxation technique. It is a mechanical intervention in your own biology. By controlling the rhythm of your diaphragm, you're directly stimulating the vagus nerve. This nerve acts as a physical brake pedal for your nervous system. It sends an immediate, overriding electrical signal to your brain to deactivate the amygdala, shut down the release of stress hormones, and cancel the false alarm. In the span of 3 breaths, You manually drag your consciousness out of reactive, defensive posture and force it back into the present reality. You restore access to your prefrontal cortex, allowing you to handle the crisis with cold logic rather than panicked emotion. The third mechanism is the cognitive filter. This is the absolute defense of your mental perimeter. In a digital economy designed to overwhelm you with continuous updates, outrage, and urgency, your attention is your most exploited asset. Before you consume a new piece of information, before you open a forwarded link, and crucially, before you react to or share a sudden opinion or narrative, you impose a mandatory 3-second delay. You pause and ask yourself a binary question. Is this information undeniably accurate? And is it strictly necessary for me to engage with right now? Every piece of irrelevant data, every manufacturer emergency, and every piece of office gossip you allow into your mind consumes your metabolic energy. By enforcing this 3-second filter, you shift your behavior from automatic, passive consumption to aggressive gatekeeping. You refuse to let unauthorized cognitive load enter your system. Furthermore, by choosing not to immediately react to or forward unverified, anxiety-inducing information, you stop the viral transmission of panic. You protect your own energetic baseline, and just as importantly, you protect the energy of your team, your colleagues, and your family. You're no longer a passive conduit for the world's noise. You become a psychological dead end for unnecessary chaos. Implementing these 3 mechanisms will feel deeply unnatural at first. Your conditioned mind will fight you with everything it has. Your brain will tug at you with the phantom anxiety of unfinished tasks. It will scream at you to pick up the phone, to check the inbox, to do something, anything, to fill the void. You must sit in that discomfort and ask yourself the difficult questions you've been actively avoiding. Why are you so terrified of a single minute of silence? Who exactly do you become when you return home running on 5% of your cognitive battery, snapping at the people you claim to be working so hard for? What uncomfortable realities are you running from by keeping your mind artificially overwhelmed? Do you truly believe your value as a professional is measured solely by your immediate availability to a screen? What is the actual, measurable cost of allowing every random digital demand to dictate the rhythm of your nervous system? And how much longer can you sustain a life built on continuous, unbroken reaction before your biology permanently forces you to shut down? The friction you feel when you attempt to pause is the exact measure of your conditioning. It will not be easy to break. Your environment is perfectly engineered to keep you tethered, constantly extracting your attention for the benefit of other people's timelines and agendas. But the mastery of this friction is your only way out. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to do more work. True discipline is a ruthless, unyielding mastery of your own attention. It is the ability to build an impenetrable wall around your focus. It requires the willingness to let people wait. It requires the quiet, grounded strength to tolerate the profound discomfort of an unread message. This is not a suggestion for a better tomorrow. This is a biological intervention for today. Before you step into your next meeting, before you open your email to begin the afternoon shift, or before you walk the front door to greet your family, you are going to take command of your physiology. You are going to put the device down. You are going to look away from the screen. You're going to shut your eyes for 1 entire minute. And you are going to take 3 deep, structural breaths. You are going to break the chain of reaction. Take control of your transitions, or the environment will take permanent control of you. Go to the comments right now and state the exact habit you are implementing today to force a hard stop in your routine. Then, step away from this screen and reclaim your mind.